great to see such a packed room today. Thank you everybody for coming. And of course, thank you as well, David. It's a pleasure to open this first talk with a fireside chat together with David, the first XRP Ledger Zone of the year, and especially with the backdrop of ETH Denver as well. There are so many new things that are coming up in the XRP Ledger ecosystem. We have a jam-packed couple of questions that we're going to cover today, ranging from AI to RWAs to DID as well. And so I can't wait to hear some of David's visions for the future of the XRP ledger, and of course, some very, very exciting updates that we have in terms of interoperability as well, especially with the backdrop of ETH Denver. So I think we can dive straight in. David, you recently shared some very intriguing visions and predictions for 2024 and the XRP ledger. One of those was, of course, the big topic of AI. So I want to dive right into the big question that there is, which is, how do you see the AI landscape shaping the XRP ledger, and really the ledger also coming to support some of the new use cases that blockchain has come to have with the development of AI?
I think there are some very big problems that we have that AI can really help with. One of the big ones is users just not understanding how to interact with the ecosystem. It's very difficult to write documentation that goes to a user where the user is. It's very easy to write beginner documentation. It's very easy to write detailed documentation, but the middle is very, very challenging because you don't know what the user understands. AI chatbots have the potential to reach the user wherever they happen to be able to understand what language the user speaks, both metaphorically and literally, and can target the information that they're giving to the specific problem the user has. Things like understanding risk. Humans are not very good at understanding risk, and it's very difficult to come up with like a one-size-fits-all answer to things like, how do I manage assets in a way that matches my risk tolerance? What should my risk tolerance be? You know, can I take a lot of risk? Does that make sense? Or should I not be taking risk? And these are very challenging questions, and they require very personalized answers. I'm hoping that AI chatbot can reach the point where they can be useful for that purpose. I'm not 100% confident that they're going to be able to accomplish all of those objectives as well as I would like them to be as good as like hiring a personal expert. But I think that we can do a much better job than we can do today with things like static documentation. So I'm very excited about the idea that chatbots will be able to target things to what specific users need, will be able to show them products that are suitable for them, help them match solutions to the problems that they actually have. Another aspect is things like creating products in the first place, things like smart contracts, auditing them. Again, I'm a little skeptical that you'll just be able to describe something into an AI and get a smart contract that you can use off the bat and have secure off the bat. And I'm also skeptical that like you could feed a smart contract into an AI. It can tell you, yes, it's secure, it's a lending contract, and you could 100% rely on that. Obviously, we're a long way from AI replacing, some of those complicated functions. But I think you're going to see, even over the next year, because AI's capabilities have increased so rapidly, I think you're going to start to see a situation where some of those problems just become easier and are handled better. I think optimized management of funds is another one. Like, how should if I have access, let's say real-world asset tokenization, which I'm sure you're going to ask me later. Let's say I have access to all of these different products, maybe hundreds of thousands of them. Like, what are the ones that make any sense for me to even bother looking at? Now, if I go to a search engine, I'm going to get the one that spends the most money on promotion or something. I'm going to get the one that some algorithm thinks matches me, but that's not something that I have input into and control over. So I'm excited to see if AI can deliver on those kinds of promises. There are also a lot of people working on crazy things like AI at things like the consensus layer and the execution layer. That's a little crazier, and I'm not sure I see where that's going to go, but I mean, obviously that's a little outside my field of expertise. So there's all kinds of excitement that it might be able to do very fundamentally new things. I do think there's a little risk of a dark side, though. I think we may see AI being used by scammers to make their scams more convincing. And one of the things that scammers will do is they'll target things a little bit different, so they're hard. I'm sure you guys have seen scam tweets that like have a word misspelled or an underscore in the middle of it. Like, AI can really turbocharge that idea of targeting a scam differently to each individual person so that it's harder to match them with templates. And we'll get an escalation. So on the other side, AIs will be doing advanced pattern matching to find accounts that look scammy and find behavior patterns that look malicious. So I'm hopeful that we can sort of win that battle. But we'll see. It is certainly extremely exciting, and there's a lot of people, working in that space.
Exactly, and at least for the developers in the room, AI is not going to take developers' jobs anytime soon.
No, I don't. You hear people saying, don't bother learning to program because AI is going to. I mean, I think what's going to happen is it will make programmers more effective, and that's always happened. People have said that about GUI tools and debuggers and simulation software, and all that's happened is that's made programming more difficult to some extent. But you know what the thing is? We're always, this is something that's it's kind of like the productivity paradox. Like, we have all this new technology that's supposed to make us so much more effective. Why are we still working 40-hour weeks? Why is everything so hard? And the answer is that we want to solve the most difficult problems we can. We want to do the most challenging things that we possibly can, because why would we do any less? Why would, and I think that same thing is going to happen, and AI may change what we're able to do, but I think we're a long way from the world where we're just satisfied with what we can get without putting in effort. I don't think humans are built to be satisfied with just being given things, and so I think we're always going to be working as hard as we can. I'm not saying don't have work-life balance, but I mean, what's going to happen is that we're going to want to program the most sophisticated things we can, and that's going to require the people who are the best at it.
I agree. Yeah, I think we're not necessarily going to be facing a 4-hour work week anytime soon. You touched on RWAs as well. I think we're seeing a lot of contributions from Ripple to the XRP ledger. In a number of different areas. Real-world assets are very, very exciting. We have institutional players like JP Morgan who are just saying how excited they are about tokenization of real-world assets, putting them on the blockchain. What is your vision for that, with particular regards to the XRP ledger and bringing on potentially this new wave of adoption because of RWAs? Obviously, we saw a huge wave of NFTs bring a lot of new users to blockchain in 2021, sort of died out a little bit. What's your view on RWAs and the XRP ledger?
I think that is just a massive opportunity. I've got my sheet of shout-outs here, so if you see me peeking at this sheet of paper, I'm looking at the shout-outs. It's got the numbers that I can't memorize, but one thing I have on here is real estate is a $200 trillion market. And there's an easy straight line to a $16 trillion market in online tokenized assets. There are huge problems around in real estate, bonds, and just all kinds of carbon markets. There's all kinds of problems around liquidity, around things like fractional ownership. You can do fractional ownership in real estate, but it's extremely complicated. You need to draw up documents, create legal entities. There's no simple way to do those kinds of things. These are all things that blockchain technologies like the XRP ledger could easily provide. One of the other things that you can't easily do is there's a whole mortgage industry around using homes as collateral and buying them on credit. You can imagine an automated system that could extend that to any asset. The ability to do that is just, that's just a massive marketplace. And I think just giving people the option to be able to hold assets that they couldn't hold otherwise. I can't easily hold real estate in Greece. If I wanted to get fractional ownership of some real estate in Greece, it would be almost impossible for me to do that. If you would imagine some marketplace for fractional ownership, I could find properties, I could get that information in a much more streamlined way. What I would have to do today is I would have to find some entity that U.S. persons could purchase shares of. That you would have to create an entity for each property that was going to be held in that way, and it's not scalable, it's not practical, and you have risk all through. What is the structure of this entity? Who created it? What is is it perfect? Is it legally perfect? If you had online marketplaces, all of those problems would go away. So I'm a huge believer, and I think also that the XRP ledger's features, particularly around speed and low cost, I think make it a good fit for those use cases. I'm sure we'll talk about programmability later, but right now the XRP ledger at layer 1 is not really programmable. It has a complex set of fixed functions that include things like a DEX and NFTs, but if you want to do something that can't be done with the fixed functions today, you can't do it on the XRP ledger at layer 1. There's other ways that you can do it, but not in that way. And real-world asset tokenization, I think, fits well into that sort of model, because if you're doing real-world assets by smart contracts, you have a lot of additional risk at the smart contract layer. I'm sure you've heard stories of people who agreed to a smart contract, to use a smart contract, that they didn't know what that smart contract did, because each smart contract is different. And so here's where I think sort of standardization in sort of more fixed function. Sure, you can't do all of these crazy things if you want to, but all of these crazy things can't be done to you if you don't want them. And I think that's an area where I think it plays more naturally to the XRP ledger's strengths.
I think that really hits the nail on the head, especially when you talk about making things legally perfect as well. I used to be an attorney, and just all of these problems with fractional ownership, they really come to the fore. And if you could just have this one token, which was like, okay, you own a house in Greece, or a fraction of a house in Greece, we just make it so much easier to invest and really just expand the pie for everybody, make those properties more valuable because more people can invest.
Wait, let me just shout out to the guys at Zonix. I had this exact conversation with them just a little bit earlier, working on real-world asset tokenization for things like bank deposits, and there they are back there. You guys have a demo, right?
Yes.
Talk to them if you want to
Cool.
see it.
Yeah, go check them out afterwards.
I didn't even need to look at my sheet of shout-outs for that one.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the legal issues involved. As part of your predictions for 2024 as well, you talk about DID, Decentralized ID. I think that this is a very interesting area, both from a legal perspective, also just from a regulatory perspective. We have, if you're looking at, for example, the increased volume on DEXs, with increased regulation, people are going to be looking at what is the source of funds, potentially KYCing users. But at the same time, we don't want to leave the vision of Web3 behind, where it's just everybody is KYC'd in the sense of having all of their information just exposed publicly online, potentially vulnerable to hacks. What's your vision for DID, of course, on XRP Ledger, but also as a whole when we're looking at the industry?
Yeah, I think that's a huge blocker for institutional adoption, particularly of DeFi technologies. One of the things that's just unavoidable for institutions is sanction screening. They can't accept money from terrorists. They can't give money to terrorists. And currently, layer one blockchains don't really have any good way to protect against that. I don't have a solution to that problem yet. I mean, I have some ideas for solutions, but there's no complete solution yet. But we're working in that direction and trying to solve the biggest blockers to sort of work our way to the world where any institution can just adopt any DeFi product. There's a proposal for the XRP ledger, XLS40, which brings decentralized identity to the XRP ledger. It is a stepping stone in the way to more compliant systems, but I think we can build layer ones that have compliance. It would be strictly opt-in, and it would be essentially sort of like a sort of a walled garden, but the walls are sort of porous. Because if the walls are impervious, why put it on a layer, a public blockchain? There's no reason to do that. But I think we can solve those problems and get to a point where their identity can be protected. So the identity is not visible. What's known is that your identity can be achieved. So if I'm doing business with someone in the United States, what I want to know is that if it's necessary because there's some compliance issue or litigation issue, that their identity can be determined, by proper order. So we would just need to know who has that identity. Some trusted player in the ecosystem, and of course you would be able to pick the player that you wanted to use. You'd be able to pick, who you wanted to interoperate with. I think we can build layer one technologies that give users that level of control so that they're able to comply. And I think institutional DeFi is going to be huge if we can solve those types of problems. Again, the XRP ledger working with this is DID standard. XLS40 will allow the XRP ledger to support it. And again, that's not going to solve. I can't tell you that's going to solve all of these problems. We don't quite have complete solutions yet, but that is a huge stepping stone to be able to know who you're interacting. Even with just that alone, if you're making a payment to a merchant, you could be sure that you're sending the money to the merchant's account.
And you talk about layer ones. You mentioned different blockchains just then. What do you think the XRP ledger is going to evolve into? We live in a world that's increasingly multi-chain. I know that we have some other exciting announcements that we're not going to spoil just yet coming out today. But what is your overall vision, just at a macro level, for XRP ledger playing with other ecosystems at a high level?
I think the future that I would most like to see, and the one that I think is realistic, is where the XRP ledger is the place where the liquidity is and where the sort of payments take place. But I think it's a hub in an ecosystem with other hubs and multiple spokes where you don't let's say you're not super interested in payments. You're selling something. Well, people still need to be able to buy it. You're doing loans. Well, people still need to be able to make payments on the loan, like payments. And if we're going to be in a multi-asset world, which we are, if anyone thinks one asset is going to take over the whole world, it's in the far, far future. So we're going to need liquidity. We're going to need interoperability. All of those things are going to have to exist. The niche that I would like to see, for the XRP ledger at layer one, is that sort of payment and liquidity space. And if you look at the feature set on the XRP ledger, that's where most of them are aimed. The DEX features, the issued asset features like escrow, payment channels, the AMM, and pathfinding. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the XRP Ledger's pathfinding feature, but when you make payments on the XRP Ledger, they can draw from multiple sources of liquidity to get you better rates. So that ecosystem that I would like to see is there are people going to want things that can't be done at layer one on the XRP Ledger. Yeah. And I don't want to, I don't want to have to tell them, well, then go find, having those, I have nothing for you. Like there'll be other places in the ecosystem, things like the EVM sidechain. Maybe we'll get hooks at layer one or some sort of partial smart contract solution. But I think the connectivity is going to be the solution. One of the things that I'm big about is that there can't just be one winner. Just like you can't imagine Google being the only successful internet company. It's absurd because all of the things that, like the smartphones that we all carry and home internet access and just all of those things that we have that allow us to access the internet exist because the internet has so many things. No one thing alone could have built that ecosystem. So we're going to have an ecosystem where everybody can find what they want and people can build new things. And we can't force them into a one-size-fits-all approach because then we just won't have users.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I guess Google won the search engine race, right? So maybe for a specific area, we'll have particular winners. So we have XRP Ledger, which is for maybe payments. We're going to have other blockchains which are more focused around other use cases. Is that the future that you're seeing when we're looking at this sort of more interchain and interoperable area?
I think so. I think there'll be a small number of blockchains that have very high value applications, and I think there'll be a large number that have applications that are of high interest to a smaller number of people, but to those people it's essential. Do I care that much about real estate in Greece? No. But for people in Greece who are in the real estate business, like they care a lot about, and it's not a small market, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge market. And some things get advantages from being on systems that are tightly connected with everything else, but generally it has high cost because you're forced into things like the amount of compute resources that are available, right? If you upload a smart contract to Ethereum, you have an ecosystem that's built for you and you can interoperate with everything and you can fire and forget and that's super convenient, but you're stuck with its rules about cost and its rules about how much execution resources you get and what languages you can develop and so on. And that's not bad for many projects, but for a project that wants more flexibility and doesn't need to be as tightly integrated, it makes more sense to have more freedom on those choices. So that's kind of the direction that I think we're going to see.
It's really fascinating. I mean, one thing that we've been extremely excited by is, of course, the EVM sidechain. We're here at ETH Denver. At EasyA, we've had over 80,000 developers actually start learning about the EVM sidechain, which is insane. Smart contracts coming to the XRP ledger in a form. You mentioned hooks. There's the EVM sidechain as well. How do you see programmability coming to the XRP ledger? There's different initiatives. In what ways do you see them fitting in? You mentioned that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We don't want to have necessarily any false ors, as you were saying backstage. How do you see those all fitting together in this ecosystem for developers who are looking to come in and wondering, well, where are the smart contracts?
Well, I think for mainstream use cases, you probably don't need smart contracts. So like if you want liquidity, if you want payments, there's a DEX, there's NFTs, there's escrow, the payment channels. For any new mainstream use cases, like used to be that last year there wasn't really support for NFTs, and NFT support was added by the developers who said like, what's 90% of what you need for NFTs? Yeah. And we developed an NFT implementation that covers 90% of what people need. Now, of course, that leaves 10% of the people who need some weird thing. Let's say you need it so that when an NFT is transferred, a very complex function determines how much of that money goes back to the artist and how much goes to the seller. Like you can't, the XRP ledger doesn't have programmability at layer one, and so you can't do that. But I want to point out that a lot of people who think they need smart contracts really don't, and fixed function is more useful to them because of the better performance, security, and lower cost. But there's still a long tail, right? That's very interesting to the people who are in those spaces. And I think that's where the EVM sidechain, I think once it's live, I believe it's in test. It's in test configuration right now, and it's not ready for live funds yet. We're getting close. I think that will be the go-to place for the sort of long tail of projects that need functionality that only they need, that they can't convince the world to build as a low level like layer one function because it just doesn't. It's just not that kind of like a mainstream use case. So I think the EVM sidechain will cater to that. Whether hooks comes to the XRP ledger mainnet, it's going to be interesting to see. That's kind of it's going to be interesting also to see how much of those use cases hooks can cover. It's not, I don't, there's some dispute over how many use cases, like, can it cover every single use case that like EVM smart contracts can cover? I don't think that's been proven yet. I think it can cover a significant fraction, if it covers 80% of them, that's still obviously a lot and very important, and that will still leave a long tail that will get pushed elsewhere, but that will be interesting. The interesting thing about hooks is it's a community project, it's not Ripple-led in any way. And it is in the XRPL spirit. It's native. Could be native to the blockchain. It doesn't require the sort of execution resources and costs that Ethereum smart contracts do. So I guess we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we will. I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot because there are certain points of controversy in the community about, do we even need smart contracts? And I think that point really does resonate with me in the sense of, like, if I'm writing a smart contract, most of the time it's like I'm going to import something from OpenZeppelin. A lot of this is just stuff that you could be copying and pasting, but it's stuff that just could be on the natively on the layer one. You just hook in. You're like, okay, I need an NFT, and the NFT is pre-built for me there. There are people who think maybe the XRP ledger should really forever just focus on maybe like one use case, which is payments, right? Keep the network clean, keep transaction fees low, don't bring all these smart contracts on, which are going to introduce congestion, all of these other different extraneous factors. Maybe leave smart contracts to another chain, or just make a couple of different tweaks which enable, whatever you would want to do on a smart contract to be able to be done on the XRP ledger directly. What do you think, from a personal perspective, maybe putting the ecosystem as a whole into the background for a second? What do you personally think about smart contracts actually coming? Do you personally think that we really need smart contracts, for the 99% of developers?
I'm really conflicted here, and I could sort of argue any point on that in that spectrum persuasively. My gut instinct is payments are where the product market fit is the best.
Yeah.
And it's a multi-trillion-dollar business, and there's things that make payments better. Like, for example, you couldn't do payments without issued assets, and issued assets don't work without on-chain liquidity. And from there, you get to things like escrows and payment channels, and then you look at NFTs and you think, well, maybe that's like closer to was there a reason why NFTs should be on a chain that has? You can make an argument that it's nice to have anything close to the liquidity, but once you do that, then you try to build a chain that does everything, and you're crappy for payments because now your speed has gone down, your costs have gone up, you hit throughput limits. The thing that keeps me from being in the just do payments camp is that there has not been as much success doing that in the market as I would like to see. Now, you could say it's still early. It's only been, a decade? But even if you look at other projects, if you look at, like, Bitcoin, do you remember when every day a new company was taking Bitcoin for payments? Yeah. And then now that's all gone away. Like, many projects, Stellar targeted remittances, Dash targeted like peer-to-peer payments. A lot of projects have targeted payments, and I'm not gonna say they've all been unsuccessful, but I don't think I've been satisfied with the level of success that they've had. And I think we have to take a hard look, and we have to say, do payments attract developers?
Yeah.
Are payments sexy? Do they have to be? Does that matter? And I'm very conflicted about this because I would love to say, let's just be the very best at payments, and then everybody will use the XRP ledger for payments. But I don't think I believe that. I think that we have to have first of all, we have to have the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we have to interoperate well with it. And then at that point, if we have good enough interoperability, like if we had another chain that could do NFTs and interoperated really well with the XRP ledger, then I think the argument for whether you should have NFTs on the XRP ledger would be different. Then it would be, does it really contribute to the use cases that are specific to the XRP ledger? And if the answer is no, then you put them somewhere else. So I think to some extent it's dependent on the technology. And I think, again, better interoperability will allow the XRP ledger to be more successful, even if it does focus just on payments. Again, personal view, though.
Yeah, no, personal. I mean, I'm fascinated by that because I feel that, as you say, like if there's limited opportunity for developers to actually build and be creative, then maybe that's something that's more of a turn-off for them. Whereas maybe if you keep it too simple, developers aren't going to come. But if you keep it complicated, or you bring that directly to mainnet, then developers can't actually, or maybe they're building too much, right? And the chain becomes slow. I guess final question on this topic before we move on to the next one would be, when you look at developers on the EVM sidechain, do you potentially see a world where the EVM sidechain is the way that developers are attracted and then they eventually filter down into the XRP ledger if it's really just payments or a couple of very specific use cases that they're focusing on, where maybe the EVM sidechain is like the top of funnel for the ecosystem.
I think that's definitely one top of funnel, and I think the reverse could happen too. So you could have people who are in the XRP ledger ecosystem and who have these long tail use cases that need smart contracts. And one of the nice things about the EVM sidechain is that, first of all, you can hire people who have EVM experience very easily. And if you want to learn a smart contracts platform, well, learning EVM is like industry standard. It's your gateway in. So I think you could definitely see that funnel working either way. I think that's one of the great things about the EVM sidechain is it does provide two funnels into the XRP ledger. And if the XRP ledger layer one is better for payments, better for liquidity, then I think it makes sense that those use cases will migrate there. So I think that's definitely, I could see the funnel sort of going either way. And I think both strategies make sense, and I think they're both ways that you could see the EVM sidechain as adding value to the XRP ledger, and not just we also have an EVM compatible sidechain.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, we could talk about that for hours. I mean, moving on, I guess back to interoperability again. If we look at the different ways that the XRP ledger is becoming more interoperable, we've talked about potentially expanding to other ecosystems. As in playing nicely with other ecosystems if XRP ledger is really focused on the payments use case. Are there any other areas that you would like to share where you see the XRP ledger really sort of growing, and in terms of the future direction as well, in terms of being more interoperable, in terms of working together with other ecosystems as well?
And there's a lot of technology being developed in the space. There's a lot of very challenging problems around interoperability, and I think it's early days, and I think that's going to be a major area for focus. I'm very excited by some of the work being done with zero knowledge proofs, but I'm also very skeptical about some of the claims being made. I'm very excited by the concept of using secure enclaves or secure hardware. There's a lot of new projects just starting to experiment with that. And the idea here being that you might not trust a crypto project, but are they going to conspire with Intel? Yeah. That seems like it's not the perfect decentralization where it's trustless, but I think we're going to have to look at, if we want to bring costs down, we're going to have to look at sort of what are realistic points of trust where someone is not going to specifically conspire against you. I think it's going to get interesting. I think we're going to have to solve interoperability. I think that's going to have to be an industry priority, because users are not going to be able to find everything that they want in one place, because everybody wants something different. If there's 500 projects and I'm stuck with 12 of them because of the ecosystem I'm in, that's just going to be we're just not going to have any users. We're not going to have any developers. Ripple kind of focused on payments because developers were not super interested in pay. It's weird. Everybody wants to get paid, but again, not sexy. And so Ripple's if there's going to be a payment ecosystem, we're going to have to go build it. And that's kind of what we did in 2014. And we don't have any retail products, which is also kind of an interesting position for a company to be in. And so for retail products, we have to work through developers. And so we're going to have to find things that developers want to build. And I'm sure you can meet lots of people here who are building both on the XRP ledger and who are interested in building projects on top of the sidechain. And assets are going to have to be portable for that to work. Assets are going to have to be portable for that to work. And we're going to get there.
Absolutely. If we're talking about, you just mentioned a lot of people who are coming to the ecosystem. We have, these 80,000 developers who are learning about the EVM sidechain. A lot of developers who are going to be learning about the XRP ledger as well. What do you think is the best way for them to get started? From a personal viewpoint, for me, it would be go and check out the EasyA app, check out the EVM sidechain. I'm sure I know that there are a lot of really great documentations as well. People who are here, who are physically here in person as well, or who are maybe, watching the recording afterwards. If they're just learning about the XRP ledger for the first time, what is your personal favorite for them just to go and check out, apart from watching all your videos?
So it's funny because I learn very differently from the way that most people do. And the source is the way that just for example, when I first started learning about Bitcoin, I learned by tearing into the code. And I took a particular coding challenge. There was a particular problem with the software at the time, and I said, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to learn my way around the code. That doesn't work. Reading specs probably doesn't work very well for other people. But I mean, there are a number of web pages, obviously, both about the XRP ledger, and obviously, if you want to learn about Ethereum virtual machine and smart contracts on it. And here's where I have to go to my list of shout-outs. So there's XRPL grants, and so if you have ideas and you want to build, I've even got over 140 projects, which is something I should have memorized, but $1 billion XRP pledge to those grants. And of course, come to Apex in Amsterdam. Great place to go. I have lots of great Amsterdam jokes, so you'll get to hear. I will tell you one joke I told last time. I said that when Americans think about Amsterdam, all they think about is people taking drugs and riding bikes. I'm like, no, that's the Tour de France. I always get the. It killed in Amsterdam. Hackathons. And there's the XRPL Learning Portal. There's a 12-week accelerator. Oh, I think it's the Learning Portal that now has a React.js tutorial about using React.js to interact with the XRP ledger. Cool. So there's all these options. I'm the worst person to ask about that though, because it's kind of not the way I approach those kinds of problems. Oh, and the next XRPL Zone, which is going to be in Rio.
Rio, fantastic, and of course, yeah, that's going to be
because
exciting.
I wanted to go there.
And of course, if you're in London, we're going to be hosting XRP Ledger and the EasyA Hackathon coming up on 13 to 14 April. We're going to be providing the opportunity for all the developers to actually build on the EVM sidechain. So if you are excited about that, come along, and there's going to be a big roadmap as well, which we're going to announce soon as well, with other hackathons and ways for you to get involved.
I don't want to go to London.
You don't want to go to London. Well, we'll see you in Amsterdam then.
Yeah, come see me in Amsterdam.
So
and in Rio, I'm sure that sounds amazing. If you can find any excuse, you don't even have to come to the XRPL Zone.
You mentioned one of the jokes. We're going to come on to your, of course, famous jokes in a second. Before then, are there any final words that you want to give for the audience, anybody who's watching online or who's going to be, who is here in the audience as well, with regards to your vision for the XRP ledger, interoperability, or any of the other topics we talked about, RWAs, AI, DID?
Wow, I mean, I could say so many things. I love coming to events like this. It's always energizing, meeting people who are building projects. Please talk to some of the other people here who are excited to talk about the projects that they're building. And I do want to say, I always like to just make a mention to it is great to escape from the toxicity in the space. I so rarely find them at these kinds of events. Usually, I guess people are emboldened online to be jerks in ways that they wouldn't be in person. And so I encourage people to come to in-person events because it's just a much better way to engage with people. It's much more productive. As far as the XRP Ledger vision, we need interoperability. Interoperability is going to be it's going to be what allows us to have customers. It's going to allow us to have an audience that we can market products to. If you came up with Twitter in 1990, it would have been a terrible idea. There's just no way that you could have built it and marketed it because your target customers, people who have home internet access and carry around smartphones, did not exist. And so we need the ecosystem as a whole to succeed. We need other projects to succeed. We want the biggest tent possible. We want to be as inclusive as we possibly can because we get no benefit from pushing people away. If we didn't have an EVM compatible sidechain, we said people who wanted to build these long tail smart contracts go somewhere else, they'll go somewhere else. Why wouldn't they? And no one technology is going to be able to solve everyone's problems. That's it. That's the pitch.
Interoperability. I think that's going to be a big theme for today as well. Yeah. So as we come to our final section, and we're coming up on time, I do want to end with one of your famous jokes. David, you can select which one you want to share. I know you have a long one or a short one. We can open it up to the crowd, but over to you.
I will open up to the crowd of which joke. So they're both pirate jokes. The long joke is funnier. It's longer. It's cleaner. The short joke is slightly less clean, but still pretty clean. It's not as funny, but I've told the long joke before in Japan. So if any of you heard my pirate joke in Japan, it's going to be the same joke if it's the long joke. So let me see hands for long joke.
I think that's everybody. The longs have it.
Hands for short joke. It's the long joke. All right, it's the long pirate joke. So a guy is walking home from work one day, and he's kind of thirsty, and he walks past the bar. He's like, I'll just stop in the bar and get a drink. So he stops in the bar, gets a drink, and he notices a guy dressed as a pirate at the other end of the bar. And I mean the whole deal. The hook hand, the eye patch, the peg leg, the costume, every bit of the pirate. And he walks up to the guy, he's like, you are the most convincing pirate I've ever seen, man. That costume is incredible. The guy says, costume? I can't do a pirate voice. I won't even try. The guy says, costume? I'm a pirate. He's like, no, there aren't pirates anymore. It's like, oh, no, there still are. We're still around. You don't hear much about us. Not as famous as we used to be, but there's still pirates around. So he says, still pirates, eh? He says, yeah. So he says, all right. How'd you get the peg leg? He says, well, I was in a battle. You know, sword fighting is what pirates do. And my leg got cut off. And when you're a pirate, your leg gets cut off, you get a peg leg. It's like, I don't know that I believe that. I don't know what I expected, but whatever. So how'd you get the hook hand? He says, well, I was in another battle. I was a little unsteady because of the peg leg. You know how it is. And just cut my arm right off. You know what happens when you get your arm cut off when you're a pirate? You get a hook hand. He says, all right, okay. I don't know that I believe that, but I don't know what I expected either, so whatever. I guess I got it to ask, how'd you get the eye patch? He said, you're not going to believe it. It was the very next day. We were coming into port, and I heard a fluttering sound above me. And I looked up, and a seagull just relieved itself right in my eye. The guy's like, wait a minute. The peg leg, okay. How else do you get a peg leg? I don't even know. The hook hand, I guess, yeah, you lose your hand, you get a hook hand. But you expect me to believe that you're wearing that eye patch because a seagull relieved itself in your eye. He said, you got to remember, it was my first day with the hook.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think on that note, that sets us up perfectly for an action-packed filled day. We have some very, very exciting announcements that are coming out with regards to interoperability today. So make sure you stick around for that. We have some incredible workshops which are going to be announced as well. So I can guarantee that if you stick around today, you are not going to be disappointed. We will be around here for the rest of the day. So if you see us around, do come and flag us down, come chat. We're excited to talk about, of course, what we're doing respectively in the ecosystem. Me with EasyA, David, of course, with Ripple's contributions to the XRP ledger. David, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on stage and sharing your visions for the future today. And of course, for everybody else in the audience for coming out here, whether you've flown all the way into Denver just for this or popping by, thank you very much. And thank you again, David.
Thank you for doing this. And also feel free to see me for the other joke.